I was always the responsible one. At 34, I shouldered our family burdens while everyone else enjoyed the ride. Tonight at my dad Michael's 60th birthday dinner, my mother Diana stood up, champagne glass glinting under crystal chandeliers, and announced, "Sophia is not family anymore." The words sliced through conversation. Then came the truly shocking part. Everyone cheered. I felt something inside me finally snap. If you've ever felt betrayed by the people who should love you most, drop a comment, sharing where you're watching from, and subscribe to join our community of survivors. Growing up as the eldest of 3 children in a middle-class suburban neighborhood, I learned early that our family operated differently than others. While my friends had parents who protected them from adult concerns, I was initiated into family problems before I could properly tie my shoes. My father Michael was charming and affectionate, but catastrophically irresponsible with money. He bounced between jobs, always convinced the next business venture would be his big break. His charisma made people believe in him, but his follow-through rarely materialized into actual financial stability. My mother Diana was obsessed with keeping up appearances. Our house was always immaculately decorated. She dressed in designer clothes, even when bills went unpaid, and she constantly compared our family to others in the neighborhood. Behind her perfect smile lurked manipulation tactics that would make political strategists envious. My siblings learned to navigate this dysfunction in their own ways. James, 2 years younger than me, became the family jester, diffusing tension with jokes while avoiding responsibility. Amanda, the baby of the family, mastered the art of getting what she wanted through tantrum and charm alternately. I became the mini-adult. By age 10, I was helping balance checkbooks, making grocery lists based on sale papers, and fielding collection calls with practiced excuses about my parents being unavailable. While other kids played after school, I was figuring out which utility was most essential to keep on that month. School became my sanctuary. I threw myself into academics, graduating valedictorian and earning a full scholarship to a prestigious university. My parents celebrated my achievement not for what it meant for my future, but for how it reflected on them at neighborhood barbecues. In college, I studied finance, determined to understand the system that had caused so much chaos in our home. I worked multiple campus jobs, sending money home whenever my parents called with their latest emergency. Car repairs, medical bills, broken appliances. There was always something. After graduating with honors, I secured a position at a respected financial advisory firm. My starting salary was modest but stable, a concept foreign to my family. I rented a small apartment near work and began building my own life. Then came the first real test of my independence. Dad lost his job again. Mum called crying about possible foreclosure. James needed tuition money. Amanda needed dental work. The calls became relentless. We're family, Sophia, became their mantra. Family helps family. 5 years ago, during another family financial crisis, I made a fateful decision. I created a joint account where I would deposit money to help them through this temporary rough patch. I began paying for their car leases, justified as ensuring they could get to job interviews. I covered family vacations because we need this time together to heal. Special occasions became my financial responsibility because celebrations are important for family bonding. As my career advanced and my income grew, so did their expectations and demands. The temporary arrangement calcified into entitlement. My siblings followed our parents' example. James, now 28, worked sporadically as a rideshare driver when he wasn't pursuing his passion as an aspiring game designer. He lived in our parents' basement rent-free and considered his occasional grocery shopping his contribution to the household. Amanda, 26, worked as a social media coordinator, but spent far more than she earned. Her Instagram showcased a lifestyle of brunches, music festivals, and weekend getaways that I unknowingly subsidized through our parents. Each month, thousands of dollars flowed from my account into the family fund. Each month, the gratitude diminished while expectations grew. When I occasionally questioned a particularly large expense, I was met with indignation. "After everything we've done for you," Mum would say, conveniently forgetting that parents are supposed to support children, not vice versa. "We're not asking for much," Dad would add with his disarming smile. "Just a little help until things turn around." The turning around never happened. 2 years ago, I met Ryan at a friend's wedding. Thoughtful, stable, and kind, he saw something in me beyond my professional achievements. As our relationship deepened, he began noticing patterns I had normalized. "Why does your mum call during every dinner we have?" he asked once. "Why do you check your bank balance every time your brother texts?" He observed another time. You know it's not normal to pay for your entire family's cell phone plan when they're all adults, right? He gently suggested after 6 months of dating. His questions planted seeds of doubt about arrangements I had accepted as my familial duty. I began to see my family through his eyes, and the view was disturbing. The more I shared with Ryan, the more I realized how abnormal my situation was. But years of conditioning made it nearly impossible to imagine setting boundaries without crushing guilt. I was caught between two worlds. In one, I was the successful independent financial advisor, helping clients build healthy relationships with money. In the other, I was the perpetual family ATM enabling destructive patterns while draining my own resources and future. Ryan never pressured me to choose, but his quiet support gave me permission to question the status quo for the first time. The conflict between my professional knowledge and personal behavior became increasingly difficult to reconcile. Something would eventually have to give. The weeks leading up to my father's 60th birthday marked a turning point in my relationship with my family. What should have been a meaningful milestone celebration instead became a catalyst for confrontation that had been brewing for years. It started with a group text from my mother 3 months before the big day. "Michael's 60th deserves something spectacular," she wrote, followed by a link to Betrayal, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. "Sophia will need to reserve the private dining room. 20 guests minimum." I did a quick calculation in my head. The private dining room had a minimum spend of $4,000, not including drink service, or the inevitable extras my mother would deem essential. Before I could respond, the group chat exploded with excitement. "Dad deserves the best," James chimed in, adding champagne bottle emojis. "We should hire a photographer too," Amanda suggested. "Something Instagram-worthy." When I finally responded with a gentle suggestion about considering our budget and perhaps hosting something meaningful at their home, instead the backlash was immediate. "Of course you would try to cheap out on Dad's special day," Amanda typed. "Some things are worth spending on Ms. Financial advisor," added my mother with a laughing emoji that felt more like a slap. Dad, who rarely participated in group texts, simply wrote, "Whatever everyone thinks is best. No fuss needed." His performative modesty only fueled my mother's determination. That evening, she called me directly. I was working late, finalizing a retirement plan for a client, when her name flashed on my screen. "Sophia, we need to talk about your contribution this month," she said without preamble. "I just transferred the usual amount yesterday," I replied, confused. "Yes, but with your father's birthday and everything, we need a bit extra. The reservation deposit alone is $1,500. I took a deep breath. "Mom, I'm not sure Betrayal makes sense financially. We could do something really nice at—" "Do not ruin this for your father," she cut in, her voice sharp. "After everything he's done for you, you can't even celebrate him properly. The deposit needs to be paid by Friday." "Tristan." Before I could respond, she continued. "Oh, and James mentioned you haven't gotten back to him about that gaming system. 2 days earlier, James had texted asking for $2,000 for a new gaming setup he claimed was partly for developing his games, but mostly an early gift for Dad since they could play together. It was transparent manipulation. I haven't decided about that yet," I said carefully. "Well, decide soon. Your brother is trying to do something nice for your father, and you're holding everything up as usual." After hanging up, I sat in my darkened office, feeling the familiar weight of obligation pressing down on me. That same week, Amanda had begun sending wedding venue options for her engagement that wasn't even official yet, each location more extravagant than the last. The unspoken expectation was that I would of course contribute substantially. When Ryan came over that weekend, he found me surrounded by spreadsheets, calculating how to manage these new financial demands alongside my own goals, like buying a home and eventually starting a family. "You know you don't have to do this, right?" he said softly, sitting beside me. "They're my family," I replied automatically. "And what are you to them?" he asked, not unkindly. His question lingered uncomfortably. Later that week, I decided to try establishing some boundaries at a regular family dinner. I arrived with a homemade lasagna and a prepared speech about sustainable financial support versus enabling. I made it approximately 2 minutes into my carefully worded talk before the interruptions began. "So you're saying we're a burden to you?" my mother asked, eyes widening in practiced hurt. "After all we sacrificed for you," my father added, looking genuinely wounded. James rolled his eyes dramatically. "Here comes the lecture from Miss Perfect." Amanda simply stared at her plate, occasionally glancing at our mother for cues on how to respond. "I'm not saying that at all," I tried explaining. "I'm just suggesting we create some more structure around financial assistance so everyone can work toward independence." "Independence," my mother repeated as if I'd suggested something obscene. "We're a family, Sophia. We support each other. Unless you're saying you don't want to be part of this family anymore." There it was, the ultimate threat deployed whenever I resisted falling in line. The dinner devolved from there, ending with my mother in tears, my father comforting her, and my siblings shooting accusatory glances my way. I drove home feeling simultaneously guilty and frustrated. The final straw came 1 week before the birthday dinner. I was reviewing the joint account transactions, something I did monthly but had been avoiding due to stress. What I found sent ice through my veins. While claiming they couldn't afford basic expenses without my help, they had spent thousands on items never mentioned to me: a weekend spa getaway for my mother and Amanda, expensive electronics designer clothes, and daily restaurant meals. All while increasing their requests for emergency funds from me. I sat staring at the transaction list, a strange calm replacing my usual anxiety. Something fundamental shifted in me that afternoon. I decided I would attend my father's birthday dinner as planned, but afterward things would change dramatically. The restaurant reservation was confirmed, the guests were invited, the elaborate cake was ordered. I would play my part one final time, but the performance was nearing its end, though my family didn't know it yet. The night of my father's 60th birthday arrived with perfect autumn weather. Oriole Restaurant glowed like a jewel against the darkening sky, its windows reflecting the city lights. I parked my car in the overpriced garage nearby, took a deep breath, and checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked polished in a navy blue dress, my dark hair swept into an elegant updo. Only the tightness around my eyes betrayed the tension I felt inside. The private dining room was already buzzing when I arrived. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the cream-coloured walls and mahogany tables. Elaborate flower arrangements towered in the centre of each table, undoubtedly selected by my mother, and certainly added to the already substantial bill I would ultimately receive. Sophia finally. My mother air-kissed both my cheeks, careful not to smudge her immaculate makeup. She wore a new designer dress I'd never seen before the price tag, of which would likely have covered my monthly rent. "Sorry I'm a bit late. Work emergency," I explained though. In truth, I'd sat in my car for 20 extra minutes, mentally preparing myself. "Always working," she said with a performative sigh. "Come say hello to everyone." The guest list included my siblings, several of my parents' friends, 2 of my father's brothers and their wives, and a few neighbours. As I made my way around the room, the conversations followed predictable patterns. "Your parents are so proud of you. Still no husband. A successful woman like you. Your family is so lucky to have you. If only they knew." My brother James cornered me near the bar already on what appeared to be his 3rd cocktail. "Dad's going to lose it when he sees what I got him," he said, gesturing to a large gift box on the present table. The tag indicated it was from both of us, though I hadn't contributed or even been consulted. "What is it?" I asked. "The limited edition golf clubs he's been eyeing, $1,800 for the set." $1,800, I repeated. "How did you—" He winked. "The family fund. It's a special occasion." I bit back my response as my sister Amanda approached, looking stunning in a red dress I recognized from her recent social media post captioned "Casual Tuesday Look," despite its obvious formal design. "Sophia, you look tired," she said by way of greeting. "Everything okay with you and Ryan? He's not here again." "He had a prior commitment," I lied. In truth, Ryan had offered to come, but I declined, knowing what was likely to happen tonight would be uncomfortable enough without witnesses. "Prior commitment on Dad's birthday." She raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "That doesn't say much about his priorities." Before I could respond, my father made his entrance to enthusiastic applause. He beamed, looking distinguished in a new suit I didn't recognize, but could certainly guess who had funded. Dinner progressed through multiple extravagant courses, each accompanied by expensive wine pairings. My father held court at the head of the table, sharing stories from his 6 decades that painted him as the hero of every scenario. My mother gazed at him adoringly, occasionally adding details that further burnished his image. When the entrees were cleared, the presentation of gifts began. My father opened them one by one, exclaiming with delight over each. The golf clubs from James and Sophia earned me a public thank you I didn't deserve. My own actual gift, a leather-bound collection of his favourite author's works that I'd spent weeks tracking down, received a polite nod before being set aside for the next package. After gifts came the toasting ceremony. Each family member was expected to stand and offer words of celebration. My Uncle Thomas praised my father's resilience. My Aunt Patricia celebrated his generosity of spirit. James told a humorous anecdote about a fishing trip gone wrong that somehow transformed my father into a sage philosopher. Amanda tearfully expressed how our father had always been her strongest supporter. When my turn came, I kept it simple and sincere, focusing on his better qualities, his sense of humour, his enthusiasm for life, his ability to make strangers feel like old friends. I carefully avoided any mention of financial matters or his many temporary setbacks. Finally, it was my mother's turn. She stood gracefully, champagne flute in hand, every eye in the room on her practice performance. "Michael, my love, my partner in this beautiful life we've created," she began, her voice carrying the perfect blend of emotion and strength. 60 years of your remarkable presence on this earth is something truly worth celebrating. She continued with a highlight reel of their 38 years together, painting a picture of uninterrupted domestic bliss that bore little resemblance to the chaotic reality I remembered. "We've raised 3 wonderful children together," she said, her gaze sweeping over James and Amanda with pride, before landing on me with a subtle but unmistakable shift in expression. Though lately I've been concerned about one of them. A small ripple of discomfort moved through the room. This wasn't following the expected script for a birthday toast. "Sophia has always been our achiever," she continued, her smile not reaching her eyes. "So successful, so independent. But success seems to have changed her priorities." I felt heat rise in my cheeks as every head turned toward me. "Family has always been everything to us," my mother continued, her voice taking on a wounded quality. "We support each other unconditionally. We sacrifice for each other gladly. At least most of us do." The room had gone completely silent. Recently, Sophia has made it clear that she no longer shares these values. She questions her contributions to this family. She suggests we're somehow taking advantage of her success. Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the gathered guests. My Uncle Thomas frowned. My Aunt Patricia shook her head slightly. "So tonight, on this special occasion," my mother's voice hardened as she looked directly at me, "I think it's time to be clear. Sophia, if you can't commit to this family properly, if you can't support us the way family should, then perhaps you're not really family anymore." The words hung in the air for one frozen moment before my mother continued. "We need people we can count on, people who understand what loyalty means. Not someone who counts every penny and makes us feel like burdens." To my shock, my father nodded in agreement. James smirked. Amanda looked down at her plate but said nothing. Then came the truly unbelievable part. My Uncle Thomas began to applaud. My Aunt Patricia joined in. Soon the entire room was clapping, some guests shooting sympathetic looks at my parents, as if they were being so brave in confronting their ungrateful daughter. "You've become so selfish lately," James called out, emboldened by the support. "All you think about is yourself. You clearly don't care about us anymore," Amanda added finally, looking up with tears that appeared remarkably on cue. One by one, family members and friends chimed in with their disappointment in me, each comment revealing how thoroughly my parents had misrepresented our financial arrangement to others. According to the narrative they'd created, I was a wealthy, miserly daughter refusing to help my struggling, selfless parents through temporary hardship. No one mentioned the luxury cars, the designer clothes, the vacations, the endless loans never repaid. No one knew about the joint account drained repeatedly for non-essential indulgences while I covered the actual necessities. My father sat silently through it all, his silence a form of approval more damning than any words could have been. This man who had called me his brilliant girl throughout childhood now watched impassively as I was excommunicated from the family for the crime of beginning to question my role as their perpetual provider. I looked around the table at the faces of people who supposedly loved me, now unified in righteous indignation against me. Something shifted in that moment, a fundamental realignment in how I saw them and myself. The fear and guilt that had controlled me for so long suddenly evaporated, replaced by a clarity that felt almost like freedom. The dining room hummed with self-righteous energy as everyone seemed to compete for who could express the most disappointment in me. I sat perfectly still, allowing the moment to crystallize in my memory. Every accusation, every betrayed look, every nod of agreement was breaking the chains that had bound me to this dysfunction for decades. When the noise finally began to subside, all eyes returned to me, perhaps expecting tears or desperate apologies. Instead, they found me calm, a slight smile playing at the corners of my mouth. I stood slowly smoothing the fabric of my dress. The room fell completely silent. "Well," I said, my voice steady and clear. That was certainly illuminating. I picked up my water glass, avoiding the wine I'd barely touched all evening. I needed complete clarity for what came next. "Let's see how you all handle things without me," I said, raising the glass in a mock toast. The confidence in my voice clearly startled them. My mother's triumphant expression faltered slightly. "What exactly does that mean?" she demanded. "It means I've finally heard you loud and clear. I'm not family, I'm an ATM. And as of tonight, this ATM is permanently out of service." I turned to address the entire room, deciding that if they wanted to make this public, I would embrace the audience. "What none of you know is that for the past 5 years, I've paid for nearly everything. The cars you arrived in tonight, I make the lease payments. This restaurant, it's not coming out of their non-existent savings. The clothes you're wearing, the vacations you've enjoyed hearing about, the comfortable lifestyle that allows for weekend brunches and spontaneous shopping trips. All subsidized by the daughter, who apparently isn't family anymore." I pointed to my brother. "James lives rent-free in our parents' basement while I pay half their mortgage. He's been between real jobs for 4 years while developing a gaming career that consists primarily of playing rather than creating." James turned an angry red. "That's not fair. I'm building my portfolio." "This is Amanda's glamorous social media presence is funded almost entirely through our family account, which only I contribute to," I continued. "Those weekend getaways with friends, those festival VIP passes, that designer wardrobe, all courtesy of the sister she just agreed doesn't care enough." Amanda's eyes widened. "You make it sound so transactional. That's what family does." "No," I corrected her. "That's what banks do, except banks expect repayment." I turned back to my mother, whose practiced poise was cracking visibly. "Last month alone, you spent $4,322 from our joint account. Would you like me to itemize those expenses for everyone here? The spa weekend you told me was a medical necessity. The landscaping for the backyard that was supposedly in urgent repair. Sophia, this is hardly the time or place." My father finally spoke, his voice carrying that familiar note of gentle rebuke that had always been so effective at making me back down. "Actually, Dad, you all chose the time and place when you decided to ambush me here. So let me be perfectly clear about what happens next." I looked around the table, meeting each person's gaze directly. "Tomorrow morning, I'm closing our joint account. The funds currently in it are the last you'll receive from me. I'm contacting the leasing companies to remove my name from the car agreements. I'll no longer be contributing to the mortgage, the utilities, the credit card payments, or any other expenses." The shock around the table was palpable. My mother's face had gone pale beneath her perfect makeup. "You can't just cut us off," she whispered, the first hint of fear replacing her earlier confidence. "I'm not cutting off my family," I replied evenly. "According to you, I don't have one anymore." "This is about that boyfriend of yours, isn't it?" my father said, attempting to redirect blame. "He's turned you against your own blood." "Ryan has simply shown me what healthy relationships look like," I replied. "He's never asked me for money. He's never made his love conditional on what I can provide. He's never tried to make me feel guilty for having boundaries. We've supported you your entire life." My mother's voice rose shrilly. "We gave you everything." "Did you?" I asked quietly, because I remember a different childhood. I remember fielding collection calls at 12. I remember skipping school events to work part-time jobs at 16. I remember sending my scholarship money home instead of buying textbooks. Uncomfortable silence fell across the table. Some of the guests began to look embarrassed to be witnessing this family implosion. "But that's all in the past," I continued. "What matters is, right now you've all made your choice. You chose to humiliate me publicly rather than have an honest conversation. You chose to label me not family the moment I questioned the one-way flow of support. So be it." My Aunt Jill, who had remained quiet throughout, finally spoke. "Sophia, surely there's a way to work this out privately." "There was," I agreed. "For years I've tried to discuss this privately. Tonight's public declaration was their choice, not mine." I picked up my purse and wrap, preparing to leave. "The dinner's already paid for," I said. "Consider it my last contribution. Enjoy the rest of the evening." As I turned to go, my father finally seemed to grasp the severity of what was happening. "What about next month's car payment?" he asked, his voice small. The naked financial concern rather than any emotional connection to me confirmed everything. I almost laughed at the transparency. "I recommend updating your budget," I replied simply. As I walked out of the private dining room, I heard my mother's voice rising again, already spinning a new narrative about her ungrateful, unstable daughter having some kind of breakdown. But for the first time in my adult life, I didn't care about the story she was creating. I was finally writing my own. In my car, I sat for a moment expecting to feel guilt or grief. Instead, an overwhelming sense of peace washed over me. I called Ryan. "It's done," I said when he answered. "Are you okay?" His voice was warm with concern. "Actually, I think I'm going to be better than okay," I replied, starting the car and driving away from the restaurant, from the past, and towards something entirely new. The morning after my father's birthday dinner, I woke before my alarm feeling strangely light, despite the magnitude of changes ahead. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table with my laptop ready to methodically dismantle the financial web that had ensnared me for years. First on my list was the joint account. I logged in to find 17 new transactions from after I'd left the restaurant the previous night. Apparently the family had decided to order additional bottles of champagne desserts, and after dinner, drinks, once I was gone, running up hundreds more dollars on what they must have assumed would be my final contribution. The petty vindictiveness only strengthened my resolve. I transferred the remaining balance minus those new charges to my personal account and initiated the closure process. The website indicated that all account holders would receive notification of the closure. I imagined the notifications appearing on their phones during their collective hangovers and felt a twinge of satisfaction. Next, I called to make an emergency appointment with Patricia, my own financial advisor. The irony of a financial advisor needing financial advice wasn't lost on me, but I recognized that emotional entanglement had clouded my professional judgment when it came to my family. "I need to completely separate my finances from my family's," I explained when we met at her office 2 hours later. Patricia's expression remained professionally neutral, but I caught a flicker of relief in her eyes. "I've been hoping we'd have this conversation," she admitted. "Your current arrangement has been significantly impacting your long-term financial goals." Together, we created a comprehensive separation strategy. She helped me calculate that I had given my family over $300,000 in the past 5 years, not counting indirect expenses I'd covered or cash I'd handed over without documentation. "That's enough for a substantial house down payment," Patricia noted, "or a significant portion of a comfortable retirement." The figure shocked me, despite knowing intellectually how much I'd been contributing. Seeing the total quantified made the situation even more absurd. By noon, I had a clear action plan. My next stop was the car dealership, where my family's 3 leased vehicles were registered. "I'd like to remove myself as the guarantor on these leases," I told the manager, presenting the paperwork. He reviewed the documents with a frown. "This would trigger immediate payment requirements from the other parties on the leases. Are you sure about this?" "Completely sure," I replied. "They'll need to bring the vehicles in or arrange new financing within 10 days, he explained. "I understand. Please ensure all communications about this go directly to them, not to me." As I completed the paperwork, my phone began buzzing continuously with notifications. The account closure notices had evidently been delivered. I silenced the device without checking the messages. My next appointment was with a lawyer specializing in family law. I didn't anticipate needing legal intervention, but given my family's reaction to last night's boundary setting, I wanted to be prepared. "You're not legally obligated to support your adult parents or siblings," the lawyer confirmed after hearing my situation. "Any financial assistance you've provided would be considered gifts unless you have written agreements stating otherwise." "What about the joint account?" I asked. "As a joint holder, you have every right to withdraw your funds and close the account. They have no legal recourse there." She helped me draft a clear, firm email documenting my decision to end financial support, removing any ambiguity that might be exploited later. We also discussed potential scenarios if my family escalated their efforts to regain access to my finances. By late afternoon, I had methodically addressed every financial entanglement. I returned home to find my voicemail box full and dozens of text messages ranging from confused to desperate to threatening. My mother's texts evolved from imperious commands, "Call me immediately," to manufactured emergencies, "Your father feels ill from the stress you've caused," to outright threats, "You'll regret abandoning your family like this." My father's messages were fewer, but focused entirely on practical concerns. "What about the Range Rover payment due next week?" And "We need to discuss the mortgage arrangement immediately." James alternated between anger, "You've lost your mind," and "Always thought you were better than us," and awkward attempts at reconciliation. "We can work this out," and "Everyone said things they didn't mean." Amanda's approach was emotional manipulation, with tearful voice messages about feeling betrayed, and text messages with sad face emojis and questions like, "How could you do this to us?" I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I sent the lawyer-approved email to all family members, simultaneously outlining my decision in clear, unemotional language, and stating that I would not discuss it further until they acknowledged the financial reality of our relationship. Ryan came over that evening with takeout and quiet support. "How are you feeling?" he asked as we sat on my couch. "Lighter," I replied truthfully, and a little in shock that I actually did it. "I'm proud of you," he said simply. "The hardest part is going to be staying firm when they really start feeling the effects," I admitted. "They're experts at pulling me back in. That's why you have me, your friends, and now your professional support team," he reminded me. "You don't have to face this alone." Over the next few days, I focused on self-care and professional obligations, while the financial realities began hitting my family. I received notification that all 3 vehicles had been brought into the dealership, followed by angry messages about being left stranded. I maintained my silence and focused on rebuilding my own financial security with Patricia's help. For the first time, I began seriously considering the future I wanted, rather than merely surviving my family's constant emergencies. The emotional toll emerged in unexpected moments. I'd find myself crying while doing ordinary tasks like grocery shopping, grieving not the loss of my current family dynamic, but the healthy family I'd never had. Ryan recommended a therapist specializing in family systems and financial trauma, an intersection I hadn't realized existed, but that perfectly described my situation. Financial abuse doesn't only happen in romantic relationships, Dr. Levine explained in our first session. The patterns you're describing with your family contain many elements of financial exploitation and emotional coercion. Naming the dynamic helped me stand firm as the pressure from my family intensified. I blocked their numbers after particularly aggressive voicemails from my mother, instructing them to communicate via email only if absolutely necessary. I focused on strengthening connections with friends who had often taken a back seat to family obligations. Many admitted they'd been concerned about my family situation for years, but hadn't known how to address it. "We could see how drained you were after every family event," my friend Tara confessed during a lunch date. "But you always changed the subject when anyone brought it up." With each passing day of maintaining my boundaries, I felt my confidence growing. The guilt that had been my constant companion for decades began to recede, replaced by a growing sense of self-worth, independent of what I could provide for others. 1 week after the birthday dinner confrontation, the real fallout began in earnest. My family had apparently exhausted their immediate resources and found themselves facing financial realities they'd been insulated from for years. My first indication of the new phase came through social media. My mother, who primarily used Facebook to showcase her perfect family and lifestyle, shifted to posting vague but pointed messages about ungrateful children and the pain of parental sacrifice. These were met with sympathetic comments from her friends, many of whom began sending me concerned messages asking if everything was okay. I didn't engage with the passive-aggressive posts or the concerned inquiries. My therapist had warned me that my mother would likely attempt to control the narrative publicly, and responding would only fuel the drama. More surprising was the text I received from my father's sister, Aunt Jill, asking to meet for coffee. Jill had always been kind, but somewhat distant, seemingly accepting my mother's version of family events without question. I agreed to see her, curious about her perspective. We met at a quiet cafe near my office during my lunch break. Jill looked tired, the family resemblance to my father more pronounced in her worried expression. "I wanted to check on you," she began after we'd ordered. "What happened at the birthday dinner was unexpected." "For me too," I replied carefully, unsure of her position in all this. "Your mother has been telling everyone you had some sort of breakdown," Jill said, stirring her tea, "but something didn't add up." "I've never known you to be anything but level-headed." I remained silent, waiting. Then yesterday your father called asking if they could borrow money for their mortgage payment, she continued. When I asked what happened to their usual arrangements, he was evasive. So I pressed harder, and eventually he admitted you'd been covering half their expenses for years. More than half, I corrected quietly. I had no idea, Sophia, she said, genuine surprise in her eyes. The way they've always described it, you occasionally helped out during tough times like any family would. That was the public story, I acknowledged. How much have you been contributing? She asked. I told her about the joint account, the car leases, the credit card payments, the mortgage contributions. With each detail, her expression shifted from surprise to something approaching horror. They told everyone you were selfish and withholding, she said finally. But you've been supporting them entirely, haven't you? Pretty much, I confirmed. And the lifestyle they present on social media, the vacations, the renovations, the dinners out, all funded by me, I finished for her. Jill sat back shaking her head. I had no idea. I don't think anyone in the extended family knows the real situation. That was by design, I explained. It worked better for everyone. If I was the stingy daughter who needed to be more generous rather than the enabler who needed to establish boundaries. By the end of our conversation, I had an unexpected ally. Jill promised to correct the narrative when possible without creating additional drama. More importantly, she apologized for her own assumptions and validated my decision to separate financially from my parents. Your father needs to stand on his own feet, she said firmly. He's 60 years old, for heaven's sake. The following day brought an escalation I hadn't anticipated. I was in a meeting with clients when my assistant interrupted with an urgent message. My mother, father, and brother were in our office lobby, refusing to leave until they spoke with me. I excused myself from the meeting and found them creating a scene in the reception area. My mother was tearfully explaining to anyone who would listen that her daughter was abandoning her family. James stood with arms crossed, trying to look intimidating. My father sat slumped in a chair, playing the role of the defeated patriarch. We need to talk, my mother announced when she saw me. You can't just cut us off without discussion. This is my workplace, I said quietly but firmly. This is completely inappropriate. What's inappropriate is how you're treating your family, she replied loudly, clearly, hoping to embarrass me in front of colleagues. Instead of engaging, I asked my assistant to call building security, then turned to my family. I'll give you 2 options. Leave now voluntarily or be escorted out. Either way, this approach has guaranteed I won't be speaking with you today or anytime soon. The coldness in my voice must have convinced them I was serious. They left before security arrived, but not without my mother's parting shot. This isn't over, Sophia. I returned to my meeting, apologizing professionally for the interruption. To my surprise, my clients were more impressed than put off by how I'd handled the situation. That was some first-class boundary setting, one remarked admiringly. The workplace incident, while stressful, reinforced my commitment to maintaining distance. I increased security at my apartment building and warned the front desk about potential unwanted visitors. Later that week, I received a text from my father asking to meet alone. Against my better judgment, I agreed, choosing a coffee shop near my office with the condition that he come alone. He arrived looking noticeably different than at his birthday celebration. Gone was the designer outfit, replaced by clothes I recognized from years past. The manicured appearance had given way to someone who looked every bit of his 60 years and then some. Your mother doesn't know I'm here, he began, after ordering the cheapest item on the menu. She'd be furious. What do you want, Dad? I asked directly. He sighed heavily. Things are bad, Sophia. Really bad. The mortgage is 2 weeks overdue. The credit card companies are calling. Your mother is beside herself. I imagine it's a difficult adjustment, I said, keeping my voice neutral. We need help, he said plainly, just to get through this transition period. Dad, there is no transition period, I replied. This is the new reality. I'm not providing financial support anymore. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. I understand you're upset about what happened at the birthday dinner. Your mother was out of line, I admit it. I should have stopped it. But you didn't, I pointed out. You sat there and let it happen. You nodded along. I was caught off guard, he defended. You know how your mother gets. I do know, and I've spent my adult life managing the consequences of how both of you get. That stops now. His expression shifted from conciliatory to frustrated. So that's it. 34 years as your father counts for nothing. Being a father isn't just biology, Dad. It's guidance, protection, preparing your child for independence. When did you ever do any of that for me? The question hung between us unanswered and perhaps unanswerable. Finally, he sighed again. What about a loan? He suggested. With a real repayment plan this time. No, I said simply. There's no more money coming from me. Then what are we supposed to do? He asked, genuine confusion in his voice. What most adults do. Get jobs, reduce expenses, sell assets. Create and follow a budget. At my age, he protested. You're 60, Dad, not 90. Plenty of people work well past 60, especially when they haven't saved for retirement. Our conversation continued in circles, him floating various proposals for continued financial support, me firmly declining each one. Finally, he seemed to accept at least temporarily that the Bank of Sophia was permanently closed. As we prepared to leave, he asked about my siblings. Have you heard from James or Amanda? Not directly, I replied. Only through their messages. James is talking about moving to his friend's couch, he said. The basement doesn't seem appealing now that your mother is insisting he contribute to expenses. That sounds like a natural consequence of adulthood, I observed. And Amanda is suddenly very interested in her boyfriend proposing. I think she sees marriage as a financial solution now. I felt a twinge of concern for my sister. I hope she doesn't rush into anything for the wrong reasons. My father nodded, and for a brief moment I glimpsed something that looked almost like personal reflection in his eyes. It vanished quickly, replaced by his more familiar self-absorption. I should go, he said finally. Your mother will be wondering where I am. As he walked away, shoulders slightly more stooped than I remembered, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Sadness for what our relationship could have been under different circumstances. Relief at having maintained my boundaries. And a strange, unexpected flicker of hope that perhaps this upheaval might eventually lead to healthier dynamics for everyone involved. The hope was tempered by realism, however. My family had spent decades perfecting their patterns. Real change, if it came at all, would likely be slow and inconsistent. My responsibility was to myself now to healing the financial and emotional damage of years of exploitation disguised as family obligation. 6 months after the dramatic confrontation at my father's birthday dinner, my life had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. The most immediate change was financial. Without the constant drain of supporting 4 additional adults, my personal finances had stabilized and begun growing at a pace that astonished even my financial advisor. You're on track to buy your own home within a year if you want to, Patricia noted during our quarterly review, and your retirement accounts are finally where they should be for someone at your career stage. But the financial improvements, while significant, paled in comparison to the emotional and psychological shifts. Through consistent therapy and the steadfast support of Ryan and my friends, I had begun dismantling the guilt and obligation that had dominated my relationship with my family. You've made remarkable progress in recognizing your own worth beyond what you can provide for others, Dr. Levine observed during one of our sessions. That's the foundation for all healthy relationships. My relationship with Ryan had deepened through the adversity. He had been my unwavering ally without ever trying to control the situation or make decisions for me. We were discussing moving in together, a step that felt exciting rather than anxiety-producing now that my financial situation was stable. The most surprising development came 3 months after the confrontation, when Amanda reached out with a text message simply asking, "Can we talk just us?" We met at a park neutral territory away from our parents' influence. She looked different, less polished and performed than her usual social media-ready appearance, but somehow more genuine. I broke up with Trent, she said after we'd walked in silence for a few minutes. I'm sorry to hear that, I replied, unsure where this was heading. No, it's good actually, she continued. I realized I was rushing things for the wrong reasons. After everything fell apart with you, with the family finances, I thought getting married would solve my problems. And then I really looked at what I was doing, using a relationship as a financial solution. It felt gross once I named it. She glanced at me sideways, kind of like how our parents used their relationship with you. The insight surprised me. That's a really self-aware observation, Amanda, she shrugged. I've had some time to think, and I got a real job, not just the social media coordinator position where I spent more than I made, an actual full-time job with benefits at a marketing agency. That's fantastic, I said, genuinely pleased for her. It's weird having responsibilities, she admitted with a small smile. But also kind of satisfying, like I paid my own rent last month. All of it. And it felt good. Over the next hour, Amanda shared her journey of reluctant but growing independence. After the family financial support ended, she had initially doubled down on finding replacement sources, boyfriends, friends, credit cards. When those proved unsustainable, she had been forced to confront reality. Mum and Dad didn't exactly prepare us for the real world, she said with remarkable understatement. James is still struggling with the concept that he needs to work consistently. How are they doing? I asked my first direct question about our parents since the estrangement. Amanda's expression clouded. They had to downsize. The house was too expensive without your contributions, so they sold it and moved to a 2-bedroom apartment. Dad finally took a steady job at his friend's insurance company. Mum's not adjusting well. Meaning she still believes this is all temporary and you'll come to your senses eventually. She refuses to accept that their lifestyle needs permanent downsizing. I nodded unsurprised. And James? Couch surfing between friends, working delivery jobs sporadically, still convinced his gaming career is just about to take off. She sighed. But at least he's working sometimes, which is progress, I guess. As our conversation concluded, Amanda asked hesitantly, "Do you think we could do this again sometime? I miss having a sister." "I'd like that," I said carefully. "But things would need to be different. Equal. A real sister relationship, not a financial one." "I understand," she said quickly. "That's what I want too." We began rebuilding our relationship slowly with clear boundaries. Coffee dates where we each paid for our own drinks. Occasional texts without financial subtext. Small steps toward a healthier connection. My parents proved less capable of adaptation. After several months of silence, I received a carefully worded email from my father suggesting a family reconciliation dinner to put the unpleasantness behind us. The message contained no acknowledgement of the financial exploitation or public humiliation, just a desire to return to normal family relations. I declined politely but firmly, explaining that any reconciliation would require genuine accountability and changed behaviour, not just a desire to move past unpleasantness, as if it had been a minor disagreement. My mother's approach was less subtle. She vacillated between wounded public posts about ungrateful children and private messages alternating between guilt trips and thinly veiled financial inquiries. I maintained minimal contact, responding only to direct questions with brief neutral answers. With James, there was little contact beyond occasional updates through Amanda. He remained angry, apparently finding it easier to blame me for his challenges than to address his own role in creating them. Through therapy, I came to accept that some relationships might never be healthy and that limiting or ending contact wasn't failure, but self-protection. I focused instead on building what Dr. Levine called my chosen family, relationships based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than obligation or transaction. Ryan became the cornerstone of this chosen family, his steady presence, a daily reminder of what healthy love looked like. My friend circle expanded as I had more emotional energy and time to invest in friendships. I reconnected with college friends who had drifted away during my years of family financial entanglement. I also found meaning in helping others navigate similar situations. When a junior colleague mentioned struggling with financially demanding parents, I offered perspective and resources that had helped me breaking the isolation that often surrounds family financial abuse. As the months passed, I recognized that healing wasn't a destination, but a continual process. Some days I still felt twinges of guilt or grief for the family relationships I wished I had. On others, I celebrated my freedom and the hard-won wisdom that came from setting boundaries. The most profound transformation was internal. I no longer measured my worth by what I could provide for others. I learned to distinguish between genuine giving and harmful enabling. I recognized that true generosity comes from choice and abundance, not obligation and depletion. The day I closed on my own home, a modest but charming townhouse I could comfortably afford, marked a tangible milestone in my journey. As Ryan and I celebrated with champagne on the empty living room floor, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced since childhood. To new beginnings, Ryan toasted, clinking his glass against mine. And to lessons learned, I added. The journey from financial exploitation to freedom had been painful but necessary. I had discovered that true family isn't defined by blood or obligation, but by mutual respect and love that empowers rather than diminishes. I had learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, but essential for authentic relationships. Most importantly, I had found that the peace of prioritizing self-respect over approval was worth every difficult conversation, every uncomfortable confrontation, and every moment of standing firm in my own worth. My story isn't about abandoning family, but about redefining it on healthier terms. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for others is to stop enabling destructive patterns, even when that choice is painful for everyone involved. True love uplifts and empowers. Anything else is just exploitation wearing a family mask. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with people you love? Share your experience in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to join our community of people learning to value themselves. Remember, you deserve relationships that build you up, not drain you dry. Thank you for listening to my journey, and may you find the courage to honor your own worth in every relationship in your life.